This is Team Left Jab Uncensored. Totally uncensored radio that doesn't care what the popular opinion of the day is. From sports to wrestling and whatever else we mix in. You'll get it straight here. Powered by the Team Left Jab United Radio Network.
Hey, how you doing, Tony?
I'm great, man. Better than ever now. I'm talking to you.
Always a pleasure having you on, Tony. Hasn't been too long, though. I mean, we were on with Louie, what was that, about 3 weeks to a month ago, so not too long.
Yeah, but it's always nice to keep, the most updated, current, even though I answered your first question with the same corny answer I noticed, every single time to you.
Really? All right, I didn't notice that. Yeah, there's a lot going on in the world. Not a whole lot going on in wrestling, so definitely wanted to get your thoughts on a few things, including some non-wrestling things, obviously. Before that, though, how have you been the last month? With all the coronavirus stuff going on, and pretty much you're here in the States for a little while longer. It seems like, right?
Yeah, but I mean everything seems to be getting and resuming back to normal. The capacity now has been lifted on a lot of buildings, and it seems like life is starting to trudge forward, especially going into the hot weather and everything. But there's changes all around us. Stuff is open till later.
Right. So by you, everything is kind of getting back to normal kind of fast. Here in New York, they're kind of doing it in stages. So it's a little bit here, a little bit there. Only 10 people here. It's kind of weird though, because you see a lot of people together outside and stuff. So you wonder how legit it is.
Yeah, and then two, it's several things kind of tie into it. At the tail end of the pandemic and at the height of looting that was going on, up until a couple days ago. So I mean, and the weird thing is that you see now you look around and it's not just families out. You can just see people just hanging out with one another, conversing with one another. Everybody's been cooped up for far so long. So
yeah, and I see the same thing here in New York. I actually put I throw the mask on every time, even if I go into a gas station for a minute. I put it on just out of respect for people more than anything. And I walked in there today and there was a lady in there without the mask, and I'm like, oh, here we go. Pretty much people are going to start doing whatever they want now that the weather's getting hot. And I'm not going to argue with anybody. I'm not fighting anybody. That's for sure. I just keep my distance, I guess.
And you notice the one thing, too, a lot of people are not even wearing gloves anymore. They've just given up totally on that. Yeah, more and more people I see are barehanded. And, with me, with the bare essentials and handling food every single day, eventually it just leaned out to where not as many people were wearing gloves on their hands. But everyone's still hanging on to the masks,
Yeah, I mean, it's basically law here in New York, so you have to wear one to go into a lot of these stores and places. So, but as far as wearing the gloves go, I mean, you're starting to see stories now online saying that the coronavirus doesn't spread as much as they thought on surfaces. So people are definitely going to stop wearing the gloves after a while. I've been doing the hand sanitizer myself. I wear the gloves here and there at work, but not really to stores and stuff. But I have the hand sanitizer as soon as I get to the car. I throw the sanitizer on and stuff.
Yeah, I made a token habit because, like I told you, my regular job, I'm mobile. And I was sitting there talking with one of my bosses. He had a long quarantine time, and he was out for a couple of months. It's a childhood buddy of mine that grew up with, a guy by the name of Gennaro Forte, that him and his family run the entire establishment that I work for. And they're so caring and giving on, me dropping what I have to do and then going straight back to Japan, or taking off on a peak busy night, doing an independent wrestling shot somewhere. So, and even when I went to Bremerton, Washington, Portland, Oregon, 2 years ago for Ron Von Hess's WUW out there. They're very forgiving with that, but it's a slow process that's taken to rebuild everything and things to resume. Two, there's also that toxic scare out of the whole air that there's no common colds because we're nearing the hot weather, you know, and there's not as many people walking around clearing their throats or that are fighting a small fever. Yeah, that's out the window too. So.
Yeah. I mean, coronavirus is all the versions of it that we already know about and deal with. It does die like in the summertime. That's why I found it kind of weird, where everybody was just kind of saying, or not everybody, but a lot of people, doctors and stuff, were saying that it might not go away. And I kind of feel like it is going away. I know it's starting up in other parts of the country and world, but I don't know. We got to just kind of see what happens. So I think there's a lot of misinformation still out there about this.
Yeah, and there's so much paranoia behind everything else.
Right.
Nobody can just relax and accept things. The one thing I always found fascinating about the Japanese culture was their level of accepting things and how we don't have that in America. Over there, it's, you know, well, my father died. Well, are you a doctor? So you can't bring him back to life? You're not a voodoo witch doctor? You know, it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? You know, and they have this overwhelming way of accepting things for what they are. Some of it is so basic. I guess that ties into so much stuff to unravel. Just what you hear about the culture and what's happened here recently. And would you believe I'm still on my way driving home? I had to drop off one last big thing over at the hospital. So I'm actually still driving. No, I'm off the clock, though, you know. All right. I dropped all this stuff off, and I was messaging you back as I was like, you know, because the stop that I had was so far out of the way. But you know, people are so generous at this time, especially, you know, doctors, because, you know, you look at them and, man, they're pretty much, they're the modern day hero. I'm just some guy bringing them their food. You know, we're just people catering to them, and people that don't forget forks and napkins and plates and knives and all the other catering stuff that goes with it. But
now you're in the food industry, so no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say you're in the food industry, so I'm sure you had a couple of you know, crazy months. I'm sure, you know, trying with all the, like, they're basically leaving. I don't know if you guys were doing it, but I saw it online and stuff. People basically, you know, just delivering food and leaving it on the steps and stuff. You know, don't go near me kind of thing.
Yeah, curbside. And there's also that awkward thing, too, where if you're going to someone's house, they'll, you know, leave it on the porch or leave it here, leave it there. But, too, you know, you see them inside scrambling to get their gloves on or anything else. You know, and there's so much that ties into it, you know, as far as just what you're catching somebody doing or what frame of mind or what quoted time did they give them, you know. They don't want to hear any excuses. They want their food that they're paying top dollar for.
Yeah, it's a crazy time.
Sometimes you kind of sort of wish in a weird way that it was, that I had the kind of job as like, hey, I want a pizza. No, it's not that simple. You know, because, you know, we serve seafood. Yeah, we serve seafood too. So, you know, we're coming to you with, you know, tubs full of ice to make sure that your crab cakes, you know, make sure that your king crab legs are at the right temperature. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. I mean, food industry is essential just as well. I mean, you guys had to keep going during all this as well. A lot of places did have to close down and everything, at least over here, but they're starting to reopen too, like you were saying before. You know, just a few final thoughts on the whole thing. Well, what do you think? Was this as bad as people made it out to be? I mean, the numbers kind of say it is. You don't know if those numbers were real, though, or if they were just kind of throwing coronavirus on a lot of people who died of other things. That's what I'm kind of wary of, although I don't discount it, though. I am understanding that it is out there and it's real. It's just that you wonder how serious it really is. Yeah,
this period of time is going to get documented so well. There's going to be so many books and documentaries done on just the coronavirus thing alone, even up to this point. It's not like it's ever going to go away. There's always going to be that looming threat. But we, you know, looking back, man, I mean, people made it seem like it was Escape from New York where they lived and what they were doing.
Right.
You remember that? You know, at first it was every man for themselves. I got to get all the toilet paper and the water. And, you know, it was just like, it seemed like it was bedlam in some places online. But then I think too, everybody was just in that same frame of mind of, you know, when is this going to be over? When do we get to, when is, And even customers, regular customers of mine would look at me and be like, "Are you nuts, man? It's a full-blown pandemic out there. Like, what are you? You're taking your life into your own hands." And I'm like, "I'm not coming anywhere near you.
Right.
I'll leave your stuff on your steps.
Crazy.
I'll leave your stuff where I need to, but I'm not about to, I'm not about to go above and beyond the call and start talking about all your problems with you that you have." And some people want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my only thing is I wonder, like, when the cold weather gets back here, if we're gonna have a combination of the regular flu and coronavirus, which I think is gonna it's gonna cause like mass hysteria, because everybody who gets sick is gonna think they have coronavirus, whether they have a regular flu or not, and then people aren't gonna be going to work and stuff. You can start the whole thing over again, even worse. But hey, that's a few months away. Let's worry about that when it happens, right?
Yeah, I don't think I know I alluded to it before, but I had so many shots on top of other shots on top of other shots when I arrived in Kenya. So I didn't. I don't think I realized just how immune I am to so much, because I mean I'm getting there's malaria over there. There's bugs that are the size of your hand, and that kind of crazy stuff. So me being paranoid and having time off, I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's get my teeth cleaned. Let's do everything that I didn't have the time to do before.
Yeah. Right. Just get it all over with, right?
Yeah. Then coming back stateside and then dealing with all this is just like, well, I mean, it's been good as far as, you're able to save money, because what are you blowing money on at this point?
Right.
There's nothing. There's no entertainment. There's no tickets to buy.
You don't even really want to order anything off of Amazon the last couple of months, because it's basically, well, I don't know if it's not that bad now, but like 2 months ago or a month ago, basically said it's going to take forever to get to you, so it's like, just wait if at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the whole thing. It's just nobody by virtue doesn't have any patience, because everybody, look at the day and hour that we're in. I can message Brad Pitt, I have no I have no business doing that.
Right.
I always thought, I always kind of laughed to myself, because guys would just find the most bizarre ways to get a hold of me, and seeing about getting to wrestle in Japan or work in Japan or anything. And I'd be like, man, it must have been so much. It was way better back in the day when I wasn't on social media and there wasn't all this, to have people message me and that kind of thing. Or, back then somebody would have to get your home phone and call the house,
Right.
And if they got that far, you were like, yeah, you thought you were dealing with a maniac if somebody got that far. But,
yeah, true. Now, when were you originally, let's say this whole pandemic thing wasn't happening, or didn't happen, I should say, when were you supposed to go back to Japan?
I was supposed to go back 3 weeks ago, and I was supposed to return like last 3 days ago. I was supposed to come back, but you know how that all didn't come to be, and that was the entire last podcast. But yeah, it was like 2 or 3 days ago we were supposed to be returning. So
right,
we're here instead, charging up our batteries some more.
What's your timetable? Are those flights going back to Japan yet, or not yet?
Yeah, the funny thing was that the WWS people who come out of pocket for all the airline and everything like that, Ramen Man himself, he hit me up and he goes, look, ball's in your court, because it's already been purchased in you and Luis Ramos's name. He's like, so ball's in your court. When you have to change those tickets, change them and get here, because you already got the tickets. He's like, basically the airline was telling them, the people at Cathay Pacific Airlines was telling him, now you've purchased this, but it's in their name. So it's those passengers. You cannot get a company reimbursement. You're going to have to use those tickets in the next calendar year. Otherwise, they're null and void. So it was like, first thing that he and the other people that came to being and pitched in, there's the people from NECO, there's the people from 666, there's the people from Eagle, there's also the folks from Product Z, Fight of the Century, and NECO. So it's like all these different promotions that were, had us booked everywhere, and they all chip in for the plane ticket too. So now it's like balls in your court, like, Tony, get yourself back over here, like you and your buddy. So Perfect timing would be Halloween because WWS always runs around that time. 666, their little sister promotion, the 666 promotion of DDT is, so it's going to be like right out the chute. Halloween's like my WrestleMania over there in Japan, so I'm going to be right back to, and I just know that I'm going to have to get into some shape. I've here lately been watching after my diet because I'm like just disgusting being all quarantined, as you could imagine.
Yeah.
Like anybody, anybody else to get motivated to go to the gym. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody is. Everybody just, we were in such a thought process of just trying to stay alive. I mean, we weren't worried about, let me look good. It's like, let me not catch this virus today. Let me get enough food and just essential stuff to make it through the week. Yeah, not too many people were really worried about how my abs look or how do my arms look or, you know what I mean? Yeah, so yeah, we're all in the same boat when it comes to that.
Which is the funny thing because I look at pictures when I first arrived in Kenya. And that's been 4 months ago already. And I got abs like all the way down to my feet. And I was, legit 245 there. So I'm looking at that and then looking at an unmuscular, anything 245. And I'm legit 6 foot and like a half inch tall.
Right.
Looking at the before and after of 245 on a guy that doesn't, is not going to the gym, not watching what he eats. Smoking entirely too much, like on the podcast that I did with you and Louie last time. I went back and I listened to it, and I was like blown away by just how much harking and hacking and I'm coughing and I couldn't stop because, I guess I'm the typical minority in this country. I, burn the midnight oil.
Right.
I got my medicinal card, you know what I mean? So there's that. Yeah.
Right.
So I
didn't know you smoked.
Yeah. Yes. Solely here when I'm in America. But the minute I go over there, I've always quit. Like Pogo would tell me, he was like, "Don't let me catch you doing that." And I,
Right.
Nope, not a problem. And then sometimes after a good night, he'd be like, "Hey, you know who's here?" He's like, "You could tell by looking." And I go, "Oh yeah, yeah." And he goes, "Listen, if you want any kind of anything, just let me know." And I go, I don't want that around me at all. Like I could just, maybe I've seen the movie Midnight Express too many times.
Right.
Maybe it's just a paranoia that sets in. It's like I want nothing to do with it when I'm in Japan.
Right. Now in Japan right now, obviously, like you said, they're going to be doing the shows closer to Halloween. Are they doing wrestling shows right now, or are they kind of shut down as well? Or not that they're shut down here, they're just doing it without the fans. How are they doing it right now in Japan?
Right now, the way that it is, they are slowly coming back to like 25 people are allowed to return. So like places like the Ice Ribbon Dojo that only hold 25, 30 people anyway, and that's the way the companies were running. They didn't stop running. So other promotions were coming in there, renting out the facility. Same thing with the Pure J promotion. Another one. It's like all female, but guys work out in their center there all the time. They put on music. You see the girls do the forward rolls, and that was like after a whole bunch of us from the A-Team promotion went over there and worked out. Not only that, there's also things like Basement Monstar that jacked up their ticket prices because they're like there's only 15 or 20 people allowed in the facility. So now even the smallest promotions that run inside there. I mean, I could list off dozens of promotions that 18 themselves run in that facility. But also, too, like Tobita, his group, all of his incarnations of the reincarnated Saitama Pro, Kito's Yano and his small promotion, they run in there, which used to be Wallaby Pro Wrestling. Naoshi Sano, his Apple Star promotion runs in there. Like, there are just literally dozens that still run in the same facility. And this was all the work that was lined up for me and Louie. It's just, it's a big step back, but it's a slow process. Things have got to get back on their feet. I mean, you don't imagine football season coming up and not being allowed a crowd. You know what I mean?
That's so funny that you said that because I had that image, as you said that image was in my mind, and I was going to ask you that next, or actually just make a statement next, which was, can you imagine that you just can't picture, with football a couple of months away, you you can't picture that, a giant stadium filled with 50, 60,000 people side by side watching those games right now. I mean, you can't even picture, a boxing event right now with 15,000 people. So you just wonder when everything's going to get back to normal. I guess when they have a vaccine or some kind of therapy or whatever that's easily accessible for everybody, then I guess they'll do it. But man, that seems like such a long way off, at least a year or so. Well, maybe longer. Who knows? Let's see if it even works.
I've always been fascinated. I always had the best time of my life, inside the nightclubs. I love the nightclub. I'm a 46-year-old grandfather who's never going to get his fill of going to nightclubs, dancing in nightclubs, hanging out in clubs, drinking at clubs, loving his beer inside the clubs. I'll never, that's the one thing I'll never outgrow. And I know that a lot of them in Japan and some of the underground ones here, what they're doing is they're telling people, pick a square, and they're diagonaling it off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that your group of people, you and your friends are hanging out in this square, other people hang out over there on that square. That's what a lot of the underground people have been doing, just in case they get busted. The cops walk in and be like, "Hey, we told you to stop running." That'll be their excuse, is that if everybody's on their own, makes it socially awkward, but people got to get out, man.
They do. They do. I mean, it's so weird because it's you see certain things that aren't allowed to happen, like graduations and stuff like that, but then stores are open, and I don't know. It's crazy because you can wait on a line at a store, but you can't be in a line at a graduation. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. I mean, but it is what it is. I mean, it's crazy right now. It's going to stay crazy for a little while longer. It seems like too.
Yeah, look here, today's a good example, and this is why I'm so glad I still went to work 7 days a week during this whole pandemic. Just because I got to get out of the house. Staring at four walls drive you crazy. So I went to Target today, and this is the same Target in my hometown I grew up in, East Hanover, New Jersey. This tiny little fly speck on the map. Wendy Williams often shops in there because my mom's ran into her, and then, oh my God, it's Wendy Williams.
Wendy Williams. Yeah.
Anyway, I went in there. There was at least 100 people inside the building today, but they had it roped off almost like a maze so that you would have to be separated from people.
Right. Yeah.
Really
they did that at the one here too. They did that at the one here too. You have to wait on the line, and then they tell you can go to that register or that one or the self-checkout or whatever, and and then they make an announcement over the loudspeaker saying everybody stay 6 feet apart. It's impossible. I mean, if you walk by someone down an aisle, what are you supposed to do? And you skip the aisle and not everybody's walking near each other. It's I don't know. It's airborne, I think, anyway. So I mean, now they're saying that it's not really you can't get it off the surfaces as much as they thought. So like I originally said, I think there's a lot to this that we just don't know about yet, and they don't know about yet. So we're not going to know for another year or so. But
I mean,
who knows?
The whole hindsight 2020, and in the future we're going to look back at all this and just be like, deem it just absolutely ridiculous, or other people shrug their shoulders and be like, I survived it. So
right.
There's so many points of view you can take on the whole thing that you understand. I understand all sides going into it. I see where people are coming from.
Right.
I see, I went through a weird, awkward phase in my late 20s where I was wearing sunglasses and gloves everywhere I went, where I just became like a germaphobe. And I think that all spawned out of Japan because everything they do is so squeaky clean. That's their routine days that they walk around in masks. And people were laughing at me when they would see my pictures come up on social media. And, what do you think you are, a doctor? And I'm like, no, I'm just look around you. 75% of these people are wearing masks. Yeah. Is what you do.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's been that way forever. I don't know. So a weird thought that just came into my head. You were talking about how you were always into the club scene and stuff like that. Now, even though you're in New Jersey, what was that club? It was like on Long Island, Ocean Parkway or whatever, and then it closed down. I'm sure you've probably been there when you were younger.
The main thing was the rounds were this: you had to go to the city for a club. Otherwise, it was like you could go to back in the day was Life, and it was the very last exit in Fort Lee, right before you get into New York. And they also had Tequila Joe's at Newark, which was like one of the greatest clubs I've ever been to. But there was always this feeling from all the club heads, like, man, we're just like losers that haven't made it into the city. Like, kind of like when you went to Action Park when you were a kid, and you're like, this is where all the poor white trash goes that can't afford to go to Six Flags. So, the rounds in the city back in the day were the Palladium and Hunka Bunka. Like, either one of those two, that was it. It didn't get no better than that. Like, we all had Limelight because of the whole lineage thing, and the club kid scene came along, and that sucked a lot of people in. But, I mean, there was such groundwork laid and all that stuff. Like, I got into the whole thing because I was collecting wrestling jackets and trying to shoehorn my way onto a card when I was 15 years old. So the Johnny Grunches of this world would go into the city and be like, hey, man, like act like you're famous, man. You're supposed to be a wrestler. You're with wrestling people, kid. Like, they're not even going to check your ID. They're just going to let you in with us, and it's like, that's how I got into, and I mean, being that I was a complete outcast in high school, I mean, who was paying attention to what I was doing at the time? But then you would go into that, you'd go into that whole world of fantasy, and then you'd come back after you've, had your first trip from a club, and you'd be like, this is so wild. Monday morning at school, none of these kids could understand what you did. They wouldn't believe you anyway. So why brag about it?
Right. It's true. It's true. One more serious topic before we get to a couple other things, including some sad things actually too. This is a deep interview, that's for sure. What are your thoughts on the whole George Floyd thing, the death, and with the cops? Not even the protests or the riots or the looting yet. The footage that you saw first and what happened to him, and the cops and all the backlash.
I was so outraged when I saw that footage, and then to find out the guy had 18 years on the force. You're going to put all those pounds of pressure on a man that was clearly in no shape to defend himself. I just thought that was absolutely absurd, ridiculous. You see all these people with their phones out recording it, and what the hell are you thinking? And what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Of course there's going to be people that are, I mean, I was absolutely appalled, and I go, this is bad. And I was thinking to myself right at that point, I go, imagine if people got together and they started protesting this thing. Like, that's the first thing that popped in my head was, that's about enough of all this. The NFL, the controversy of getting on one knee and people outraged about that. And, 17 years in Memphis definitely warped me as a human being, because Martin Luther King, I mean, MLK was the world, civil rights movement leaders were murdered right there in Memphis. And I'm a 20-year-old kid, 19, 20 years old at the time, and I step right into this. And I'm from a well-to-do suburb out in Jersey. I didn't know what I was getting into. But, regardless, it's like I just don't understand the concept of looting and destroying where you live in your own, like the dude that rang me up at Target today. He's a very clean, very polished-looking guy. Clearly, he'll leave behind that Target one day. But I looked at someone like that, and I was like, what if this guy just joined in the mob and looted this place where he worked, and he was out of work, for the next week? Wouldn't he look back and realize, oh, man, I shouldn't have. Forget about getting the insurance money back, at Target and all that. I mean, to destroy your own neighborhoods where you live, spray paint, that's like, I remember years ago in Memphis, they were outraged because they took Third and Vance was a prostitute hangout. Everybody knew it. Everybody in Memphis knew. Third and Vance, that was behind Beale Street, that's where you go there's hookers, and there's all kinds of crazy tracks in Memphis. Everybody knew of the legacy because, mayors would get busted down there, high-profile football players, Even the Big Show got caught for whipping it out. Some girl at a hotel. Memphis tends to bring out the crazy in people.
Yeah.
But I remember they knocked down all that, and they built like brand new state-of-the-art housing projects. I mean, and these things look beautiful when they were built. And not even 2-3 years later, graffiti everywhere, like crack pipes left out by the slides. It's just like disgusting. And it's like, how could you do that in a place that you got to wake up and walk around every day? Yeah. How could you do that?
Right.
There's not one. Yeah. You can't look back at that and be proud of any of that, and say, hey, to your grandkids, hey, I stood for something. What are you standing for? You're tearing down, destroying your own community, and then you wonder why other cultures look at Americans like a bunch of friggin' animals. That's why. If I'm speaking too much, shooting straight from the hip a little too much, so be it.
No, that's right. Yeah, and what it does is, for the people who are peacefully protesting, who actually are trying to, do something here, it gives them a bad stigma because they all get lumped together, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I just, when you look at the entire thing, you go, all of you are going to be lumped together because this now becomes the whole buzzword, Black Lives Matter and all this. Oh man, when you tie it all together, it just, not only that, you look around, man, there's plenty of white people that were looting too. There's plenty of Latinos that were looting.
And just going back to the video, I almost feel like an answer to some of this, as far as the cops and everything goes, is maybe they need to ban using these chokeholds and just really going anywhere near the neck, because it seems like every time something like this happens, where one of these guys gets killed, it's always like a chokehold or the neck, and that's a dangerous place to really, put a lot of pressure. And maybe if you ban that hold, at least, you could still hold the guy down, hold him down by his back or something. You know what I mean? That might solve a couple of these issues here.
Put a knee in his spine if you got to. Anything but the neck.
Yeah, that's what I'm
your
saying.
windpipe.
Then there was the other guy, that was selling cigarettes, and the guy had a chokehold on him. I mean, like an MMA chokehold, and he died. Then that was another, case that they had to look at. So I think if you take that away, that could solve some issues here. But gotta see, I guess.
And then what was it? Right about the same time in Louisville, what did the police do? They obtained the warrant for this guy's arrest. The guy had already moved out of the house, and new people had moved in. And this man with his wife watching, the police kicked in the door and shot the guy. They what did you think was going to happen?
Right.
What did you think was going to come out of this? What, police force? Yeah. There's no way anybody on the police force looks at it, it's proper restraint.
Yeah.
And then you wonder
what
just
like I guess they feel like they're never going to get in trouble. I think that's part of the problem too. They feel like they're immune to any kind of discipline.
Yeah, 2020, there's somebody is video recording something somewhere. It's impossible to escape, especially when you see the guy yelling, and the cop yelling at him.
Yeah.
You're going to draw plenty of attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to draw plenty of attention.
Crazy. Well, we hit the two hot ones there, Tony. Coronavirus and a George Floyd murder. So let's get to a little bit of wrestling and really two really sad things. I mean, Stardom's Hana Kimura. I'm going to be honest. I knew her. I knew the name. I saw some footage of her over the years. Didn't know her. I didn't watch her that much, obviously. Just some YouTube videos and stuff that I came across over time. But did you know her personally, or did you just know of her?
Yeah, she was a frequent at Bull McConnell sold her bar, so now it's been labeled as a sports bar. And Yamada runs it, and Yamada was like one of her frequent. She was pretty much like her understudy from day one. Anyway, they have like a rotating stock of all those Stardom's girls that go in there. And what they do is, I've done it at Naoshi Sano's bar, which I'll go into detail about that too, because her mother used to frequent there, and she was a guest bartender there. And the way it works is, they give you your fee plus 30% of whatever is sold for the night. And then, you can sell your gimmicks and stuff out of there. So her and her mother did a lot of female death matches. She was one of the first to do it on a frequent basis, like on Independence. So I knew of her mother like a lot better than I knew of Hana, but with Hana, it was one of those things where she, and God, I hate to, but this is the God's honest truth. A lot of girls on that roster felt way too much, way too fast, and she excelled that fast anyway, because she had been at it since she was like 14, 15. She'd been wanting to break in as a professional wrestler, but she wasn't. Once the whole shift began and she was on the reality show, the Japanese are not they're familiar, of course, with documentaries, but they're not that familiar at all with reality shows. Like, it's something I pitched to some of the networks that I went over there, and they always told me, but the reality concept would not really work like in Japan the way that it does in America. And now you're starting to see it more.
Why is that? Is that they're just more serious over there, and they look at it as being silly?
Yeah, and not only that, it's because too, the Japanese they're not, you have to earn their trust. It's not that they're standoffish. It could take years before somebody even invites you into their house. Like, that's just the way that they are. There was so many people that never knew that Misawa, the former Tiger Mask, nobody even knew he had a family. Even his closest friends didn't know about his wife or his children, because he kept his private life that private. So for the Japanese to accept that not only are this younger generation but a female is going to go on a show like this, to where they show her doing laundry. That's too personal. That's too far. They should not do that. And the entire situation, which I don't know if you know what led up to the events of everything, but
no, I actually don't. I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, you look at her. She looks like she's a cute girl. She's only 22 years old, a wrestler. What was she getting bullied about, and who was doing the bullying? Was it just random fans, faceless people on Twitter?
Yeah, which the Japanese law enforcement has went after, because they logged all the IP addresses. They were able to pull that up from all the inbox messages she had. So now the Japanese law enforcement.
What were they bullying her about? Like, what was the deal? What was the problem with her?
The entire thing that happened was, and this had been building up on the show. She was on there for the first few episodes of the new season. That's up on Netflix, and they have since ceased filming anymore because of this tragedy that happened. But what happened was, reality shows have writers, and that's another thing the Japanese are not familiar with. They're like, well, then it would be a lie. That would be completely false, because why would a reality show, the one that's real and about real life, why would it need writers? Because they're not familiar with the concept of that working, you know what I mean, of something being manufactured. It's like, okay, my regular job that I deliver, there's so many, I've delivered to Snooki maybe 24 times, and it's so weird because the worlds just kind of mesh together, like the reality show, and whenever like pro wrestling comes up and that kind of thing, we know we're cut from the same cloth. Like, I know that a lot of what took place in that show was a work, and I know what wasn't, and it's too obvious, and enough truth has come out about it. So what happened was, going into this episode, the last thing that they showed on the episode was her washing her wrestling gear. And this is not just wrestling trunks and just regular gear. This is the overly elaborate one that she had with the shoulders and the straps and all that. And it's like a $300-400 outfit. Well, what happened was the guy threw his laundry in with it, and because of the colors, it bled off onto hers, which, I guess that's the way it was scripted. And then it was scripted. She comes at the guy. She starts yelling at him and berating him. And the guy's like, relax. Oh, I'll get you another one. Don't worry about it. And she was like, I have wrestling. I have to wrestle tonight. That doesn't, you just ruined everything. Yeah. And she smacked the hat off his head. And that's when the Japanese people got outraged. They're like, this is not what a young female Japanese woman does. Jeez. This is, and not only that, she's mixed too with Japanese blood. So then there came that entire, and that's when the tidal wave opened was, well, maybe if she was full Japanese blooded and she wasn't one of these mixed dogs, like, that's when the whole, and she got defensive about that, and she's like, now you're attacking my mother, now you're attacking my father, and
Right.
People can be vicious, like she was painted out to be the heel on the show because she was so beloved in wrestling. It would have been ridiculous to have made her on that show like larger than life, like a diva, because it was like, that doesn't add any entertainment. It's kind of like if you've ever seen Partridge Family, like they always had David Cassidy. Yeah, they always had David Cassidy back in the 70s act like really quiet and humble and shy, but him and Danny Bonaducci both were the worst as far as womanizing and young with a ton of money to spend and sleeping with women old enough to be their grandparents before they were even legal age.
Right.
So that was the whole idea of them going into the concept behind Hana being on show, was that you can't take Hana and make her a babyface on the show too, because people are going to get sick of her. And, it was a way too for her to work off the gimmick in wrestling too, because it's got more shelf life if there's like a heelish, if she's kind of heelish and lashing out. But I don't think the Japanese people, they're not ready for that reality TV run. They're not ready. That's too much for them to take in. It's not part of their culture. It's something that for years, it's interesting if you watch a documentary about somebody, but when you follow somebody around and you're making an episodic TV and people are having beefs and women are screaming and cursing at guys and smacking the hat off their head and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's just the Japanese as a culture. That's something that they don't even want that out there. Japanese people don't act like that. So a friend of mine had told me, it's like, actually a female friend of mine, Deborah, who wrestles for, her and I were an intergender tag team champions for like one of these smaller feds, Shinjuku Mat War Pro Wrestling. It's another promotion, but I just remember her telling me, she was like, when you see reality shows in America, she's like, it's just like they're throwing so much at you and just they're so into establishing these characters that are just over the top. Everyone's angry, everyone's crazy. And she was like, that would never work in Japanese culture, because I talked with her about pitching an idea like reality show over there, and she was like, you'll get stumped. She's like, networks don't know how to handle stuff like that. They've never seen that whole world like in front of their face. Like, they'll do documentary after documentary on like homeless people, which is so rare over there. And they don't want that to be some kind of exposure into, oh, look, this is how Japanese people are. This is how Japanese people act. It's so funny too, because the more people that I run into, like when you go to the Maid Cafe that's in Akihabara, the Japanese people hate that place too, because they're like, outside of pervy old men that go there and, want to look at their favorite little girl, or other people think that it's the Japanese culture, so they want to go and see it. Japanese people, like especially women over the age of 60, every last one of them that this comes up to, they're like, I hate that. Those girls are trying to be so cute and they're wasting the most beautiful years of their life, like being this goofy character and Japanese. I remember the lady that lives in my house over in Japan. I just remember her telling me over and over. She's like, Japanese people don't act like that, She's like so cutesy and over the top, like adorable. And she's like, Japanese women don't act like that.
Man.
She's like, they don't go out of their way to act so cute all the time.
So was there a way for her out of this, you think? Could she have just gotten off the show once she realized that it was going to, be all these headaches, or was she pretty much stuck in it and, to the point where she wound up taking her own life over it?
Yeah, I think the world of wrestling just head-butted, ultimately, reality. It just hit a brick wall because she had spent so long and so hard working so hard to be established and be a baby face, and people genuinely loved her. I mean, she had dozens of fan clubs out there, but I don't think she never geared herself for, like an acting career or on a reality show. she was not ready for that criticism, I'll tell you that. And 22 years old, my kid is 22. My oldest is 22. You haven't even lived yet. 22, you know, I mean, you would think that, you know, everybody acts like, you know, remember Robin Williams? I was over in Japan. I was mid-run with Pogo's WWS, and this was at a point in time where he was touring all the way up to Osaka. And I remember during this, Paul McCartney, Jesus. No, Robin Williams, when he committed suicide, man, everybody became like an expert on depression and everything, which we all suffer through some type of depression on a daily basis. You know, some worse than others, some know how to handle it, but how in the world are you going to tell somebody how to be, or, you know, hey, all you had to do was call me. If you're in that frame of mind, you don't want to talk to anybody. No one's talking you off the ledge.
Exactly.
Or you weren't convinced in your ways that somebody could talk you off the ledge just like that, you know. I mean,
well, it's a shame. It's a shame, you know, the 22-year-old girl and over something like that. You know, I understand that the culture's different there, but still, I mean, it's like, it's a reality show. It's nothing to die over, but, oh, man, just crazy. Like I said, I didn't know really of her. I knew who she was. I heard the name, and then I had seen her, you know, on videos and stuff like that. I never really took a close look at her, but then I saw her like 22. I'm like, oh, man, that's sad right there. But, hey, I mean, it is what it is. You know, it's another guy, Danny Havoc, died, this past week, I guess. Did you have any interaction with him over the years, or not really?
Absolutely. I mean, I personally wasn't as close as a lot of other guys are. And 2017, like, I had met him at Tournament of Death 8. And that's when I came up, and they're like, yeah, maybe if somebody drops out or something, you know. And this is when I was living in Memphis. So Tournament of Death 8, I get to meeting him. You know, I was like, oh, cool guy. Then I got his number, and he and I would talk because at the time for my own deathmatch thing, I was bringing up like Drake Younger, Scotty Vortex, Sammy Callahan, DJ Hyde, Joe Gacy, who I love. Joe Gacy's like one of those true people, I'm going to say, within wrestling that I can talk to and continue being a friend with. Like, he's that good of a human being. And I don't have a whole lot of those within wrestling like that. But the guys like Matt Tremont and Louie, they were like that with Danny Havoc. And then all the way to seeing in 2017, I remember I kind of laughed with Danny because I go, you just wrestled Onita. And he's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And I go, you had to see where I was from when I see you reaching down and pulling Onita up by his shirt. I'm like, you got to wrestle Onita, dude. Holy God. And he's like, oh, man. And then he told me the funniest Ricky Shane Page story where he said that Ricky Shane Page didn't hear about Pogo passing away. And when he saw Mr. Pogo, too, was coming in to wrestle, he thought he was going to wrestle Mr. Pogo.
Oh, those are the
so Ricky Shane Page was like flipping out. But so for the last few years, every time I went to H2O, I would just talk with Danny. And I remember I was like, what made you just retire? And he just flat out told me, he goes, it's never going to go mainstream, and that's enough. And I go, hey, man. I mean, the guy literally got to see the world. Germany, right? Japan several times. I mean, he went all over. And, he died of a broken heart, but what I really don't like, and just like with the Justice Payne thing, is how many people wind up in my inbox going, what happened to him? It's like, don't you think that's a little classless? You know, with Pogo, with Pogo is a medical issue, and, you know, and I'd rather people know the true story. That's what led me to talking to Dave Meltzer and, you know, and saying to Dave, hey, I know years have went by and I don't like you. I never will. But, you know, at one point I was a subscriber and I want you to get the real story. You know what I mean? With Danny, I didn't get the real, like, you know, I had enough people tell me what happened. And I was like, God, he died of a broken heart because he just lost his wife from cancer.
Right.
You know,
I mean, it's not. But people who couldn't really figure it out. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. His wife died, in March? in March or whatever, of a sickness or whatever, and he died 2 months later, and it wasn't from a sickness. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. I mean, we know why he died, or how he died, I should say.
Every day that he spent after his, some people have the strength. Other people, hey, everybody's different. They call it the coward's way out, or, hey, you never know what people are internally going through too. You never know if there's a trigger inside of them, or you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
It's not really for anybody to say that hasn't been in their shoes. How unfair is that? Nobody knows of all of your issues, and it shouldn't be out there in people's faces and a crush for you to lean on.
Right.
To me, that's not fair.
No.
But I mean,
no.
If I have the platform here, and I could give you what's on my mind, and I could tell you what my thoughts are, I don't mind you reading into my head, because that's the way that I'm wired, and I'm different from this guy, and I'm, I got to be honest. Like, I always tried to be like a tough guy, and well, Pogo's gone. He wouldn't have wanted it this way, but man, that was the most painful damn thing I've ever felt in my life. I had an ex-wife who passed away from cancer, stomach cancer, and I mean, that was, oh God, that was rough, and her and I weren't on the best terms.
Right. But I was going to say, it's a lot tougher too when the person is so young, right? I mean, it's like his wife was 30 something, I guess, right? I'm just guessing that age from her picture. I mean, she was like 34 maybe, if that. So, and was he married? He was married before, right? To another girl?
Yeah, he was married to another. Right.
Okay. Because I remember
she would be
watching
a lot of the CZW shows, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I remember many, many years ago, probably like 7-8 years ago, watching a Danny Havoc documentary on YouTube, and the girl, like his wife, I remember saying, I really don't want, I'd rather he not do this, because I worry when he's doing all these, bloody matches, if he's going to catch something or whatever. And then I saw this girl, and I'm like, well, that's definitely not the same girl I remember from that video. And then I read that they got married like 2 years ago. So obviously it's his second wife or whatever.
And he's one of those guys too that and for wrestling, this is almost impossible to do, but he always managed to steer clear of the politics. Like, you will not find a human being out there that was like, oh, that no good Dan. No, he was super friendly to everyone. And if he lashed out at you or was pissed off about something, it was like he's got every right to be. You know what I mean? I remember there was a point.
I was going to say, he wasn't on social media, was he? Because I think the only thing I remember seeing is some Twitter thing, and it wasn't him. It was like a website, whatever, that claimed to be his unofficial something, whatever. Yeah.
He openly despised social media. And you got to be a really strong human being to be able to do that, especially in this day and era. You know what I mean? He was an artist on top of it. I mean, he could build websites. It's but he was the guy that was like, nah, he took a stance on it and said that he flat out. I remember it was really weird from that documentary. I just had to know, and I had asked him a couple questions. It wasn't just a continued conversation. It was stuff that was burning in my mind. I was like, oh, cool, you got Danny Havoc here. You could ask him about this. And the weirdest thing about him, he was deceptively taller than people realize. That's one of the things that blew me away about the CZW guys. All of them were deceptively larger or taller than I had envisioned. I always found that really strange, where it was a total opposite when I met the ECW guys. They were all way smaller than I thought they were after seeing them. Yeah. But I remember with Danny Havoc, I had asked him about on the documentary, and he goes, that's not even my favorite pizza place. They told me to go to the favorite place that you like to eat. And he was like, oh, he's like, I guess this place, I guess because they bought him dinner or whatever. He's like, all right, cool. Free lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame for his wife and him, because he's always someone that I wanted to interview. And like I said, he wasn't really on social media, so I never really pursued it too hard, because he's just not around to message him or whatever. But everything you hear, he seemed like he was a really nice guy. He helped a lot of people. Like you said, great artist too. I mean, I saw John Moxley wrote something I think on his social media saying that the grenade shirt that he wore in AEW, maybe his first one or whatever that they made for him in AEW, was Danny Havoc drew that up for him. So, and then I saw a lot of sketches that I think Tremont or Louis, one of those guys, put out on Facebook or whatever, and he was talented. It's a shame.
His story is so fascinating. Like, I remember I ordered from Smart Mark Video. He did a shoot interview, and I was just dying to find out, like, wait, if he's really, because I was down in Memphis. I didn't want to, like, when the CZW guys or the IWA Mid-South guys would come and wrestle at the old Sex and Violence Memphis promotion. I just remember I didn't want to ask them too many questions, So in the first part of his, like, shoot interview and everything, and then later on I was able to fill in the blanks when I asked him other stuff. But for a guy to come off the farm in, like, Cylinder, Iowa, out in the middle of nowhere, and realize, when he watched old Wing and old FMW tapes, he was like, oh, wow, I could do that right here in America. And he found CZW. And I just thought, like, that story will never be told again with anybody else. Because, like, now, everything has changed. But a ground-up story of a kid from absolutely in the middle of nowhere to be able to see the world on another man's dime and make money for himself. And he lived an absolutely fascinating life if you look at it. I mean, really interesting, really, really interesting human being. But my heart goes out to all these guys. We're so close, so tight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like I said, I had just gotten the rest of it. Like when the other guys, when the Devin Moores and Lucky and those guys weren't talking to him at H2O, I would just sit there and talk to them because I found him to be, a very interesting guy. And it was like but I never was on the level of friendship that these guys were, like, so tight with him. And I know Matt Tremont was damn near his best friend. And I remember this is days ago, I told Onita about it. I told Onita and his girlfriend, and they were just like, whoa, you're kidding. And no, I'm not. And the classiest thing was, right as I'm talking to him, Tremont responded back to, because I had texted him, and then Matt sent me something back. He was like, listen, I truly do appreciate it, man, because, I was like, I know that you're at the height of this, and I don't want to be that guy that's like, but he was one of the guys that I did a lot of copy and paste when Pogo passed away because I got tired of the same questions and what happened. But I remember guys like Pondo was one of them, and Matt Tremont was another one where I hand typed out, like, what happened, what I was going through, because, man, even to this day, it's still something. It's not like it's a sore subject with me, but it's just the whole thing is just painful. All of it still.
Yeah, it's a shame, man. Just a question though. You said that when you talked to him about his retirement, he said enough is enough. It's not going to go mainstream. What's not going to go mainstream? Just like the death match wrestling that he was doing. Is that what you're talking about?
Right, the death match genre. Because we talked about how the death match genre and how things have splintered off, and even in Japan, it's like it just continues to splinter off. This one folds, 3 more open up, and that kind of thing. So I completely saw where he was coming from, and not only that, you're isolated out in Japan, and you think you have plenty of time to look back at stuff, and that's why when he was residing there, Nick Mondo was great because I would just drop in, talk with him, and just get like a grasp of like, just get in my head of where things were going and what I was going to do. Because here's a guy who found it, and that was after he almost obsessed over it to the point where, it documents really well that he would have taken his own life if he continued.
Right.
Just, one-upping himself. And
Yeah.
I always thought that was so interesting about Danny Havoc was that, he pointed out, he was like, it's not going to, it's always going to be this underground, gritty thing. It's not going to be, and I would explain to him how back in the day, and I was like, you're like the generation after me. I'm like, you had to see when they had baseball stadiums over in Japan, like you could see that on video, but to be around the hysteria or be on the outer fringe like I was, and being able to be a part of that was like just mind blowing. Like, you really had to put the brakes on and look back like hard and then moving forward being like, whatever happened to. And then you get to understand, you get a better understanding into the world of deathmatch and what happens when and that kind of thing. Or they're a safe way or a really brutal way to go about it. And too many times with the years of watering down with the way things have went like stateside in America, it's just been like almost mind-boggling. Like, you see the smaller crowds and you see guys doing stuff that's even more dangerous, yet less people coming out. Or, this company is so big. Oh, what was their biggest crowd? 1,000 people. Well, for what they're doing, they're the ones that should be filling up baseball stadiums, with how far they're willing to push it.
Right.
But how that's all just kind of, how it's all just kind of went away, How it's all just, it's gone as time has went on. A lot of those fans are very, it's a phase that they're going through, or it's something that, it's something that they latch onto, but only for the time being. It has no shelf life in your mind.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because sometimes I think it's almost like shock jock radio, Howard Stern and Don Imus back in the day. It's like when you're younger, and that doesn't really exist too much now compared to back then, especially, but it's like when you're younger, you're into it and, you enjoy it and stuff. But you even those guys themselves, the guys who are making that kind of radio, as you get older, you just change and you don't enjoy what you once enjoyed and you're more serious. So I understand what you're saying, the kids or the young adults or even the little bit older adults who enjoyed that type of wrestling at one point, they get married, they have kids and they're just not around so much. Now you got to rely on the next generation to like it, and that's not always the case because it's a little different every generation, right?
Right. I even had like a personal situation like hit home where my aunt, my father's sister, her daughter married a guy that had to have every wrestling magazine, went to all the matches, and then it got to the point where his wife, my cousin, Ginger, literally told him, any more of this wrestling crap and that's it, I'm out of here. They wound up having kids together and everything else, but she made him like throw out all of his stuff, and he was one of those guys. He was pretty much like a smart mark back in the day. And this is like back in 84, 85 when I was just meeting this guy. So even with that, it's weird. You see guys like they break in on the indies and they're early 20s, mid 20s. By the time they hit late 20s, they've settled into a regular job and gotten a wife.
Right.
And that's when you see like their wife has the influence of telling them like, don't do that wrestling crap. And then guys just disappear. Guys just disappear. And then maybe that's why I could never get a wife to stick around and stay with me because it was so funny when the Japanese all discovered that my last wife number 5, Japanese wife, that we weren't together anymore. And I was like, she just gave me the option. Arabu, is it going to be like pro wrestling, or are you going to continue pro wrestling, or and I worry about you, and you got a choice. It's either pro wrestling and I'm like, you got to go. It's like, no more pro wrestling. No more you. Get out. But when I would tell the Japanese guys that, they would crack up laughing like it was the funniest thing they've ever heard. And then like Miss Mongol looked at a picture of my 3 kids and she goes, she goes, yeah, typical pro wrestler right there, man. Clearly 3 kids are from the same mom, you know. It's, like it's even like Onita would have his fun. He goes, "Oh my Lord!" And he goes, "Black Tony is a white Tony, and what looks like a Mexican Tony." He's like, "Is there anything you wouldn't fuck?" You know. And then he'd see Pogo laughing, and he'd look over there at him, and he'd go, "This guy's got a daughter from Puerto Rico, or one white daughter from Banana Baby," he called it. You know, he's got a banana baby in America with this white woman, and then he's got Japanese kids. He's like, "Oh my God!" He's like, "Between the both of you, there's nothing you wouldn't fuck." You know, he's like, "Probably each other." You know, and when he said that, you know, the whole locker room was cracking up laughing because they're like, "I can't believe it, man. You turned him into a comedian." I go, "This is my life he's friggin' laughing about, you know. This is me that he's cracking up. Yeah, I'm the butt of his joke. That's nice." But, no, that was always Naoshi Sano's thing. He latched onto that whole thing. And Sano, who often would bring in Hannah's mom to guest bartend at his bar at his family club, Naoshi Sano would always, you know, banana baby. And I'm like, that is so screwed up. Yeah. The first time he said it, I go, "Could you define what a banana baby is?" You know, and he was like, "Oh, you already know, man. You know, he's yellow on the outside. Everybody can tell it's a Japanese kid." He's like, "But it's white anyway." So, that is so screwed up.
Yeah. Well, let's finish it on this note, Tony. As far as, have you been watching any AEW or WWE? Anything interest you, catch your eye? Anybody in particular, or not really?
I don't have my finger on the pulse of any of the AEW, WWE, Impact, any of the. But you know, I did make it a habit to. It's like on my home computer, I have at least one website that is added to my favorites, and every night I'll click on that and just kind of get the headlines, see what's going on out there, and that kind of thing. I do not and have not watched the product. I fast forwarded through last year's WrestleMania. I just kind of jumped around that, and you know, because I had already read and heard so many people analyze these things to death, like I do every time I go through my Facebook feed, and it helps me feel to know what's going on out there without actually having to set aside the time. And there's plenty more time for me to watch old episodes of The Twilight Zone or Mystery of Science Theater 3000 without totally consuming myself in wrestling and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's been kind of flat without the fans and stuff. You know, you're happy that they're still doing something, especially with the regular sports not doing anything right now. But nothing really groundbreaking that we're gonna sit here be talking about, you know, years from now. So you haven't really missed much, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've been told over and over by people that it comes off so flat. It's
flat,
like
very flat.
2-day-old soda that was left open, or a beer can that was open and half drank from a couple of days ago, where, you know, it's just like guys just like clung, like doing this, doing that, breathing really heavy. And then, like, you know, just this awkward silence and no fan interaction, and it just looks so vacant. I can't figure out how they weren't able to get around at least, like, doing it like Beyond Wrestling style, where, you know, all the wrestlers go out and crowd around the ring, or couldn't they find a way to get away with that in some kind of...
They're doing that kind of now. I mean, they just have them spaced out so much, you know, throughout the arena that they're still at the front, you know, they're still in the front row, but you know, when it's like 30, 40 people and you space them out that much, it's only so loud that they're gonna get, you know. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's still
I kind of look
like it was in the beginning when there was nobody there. I remember seeing the Undertaker doing a promo on AJ Styles. It was like right when this started, and it was literally silence, and it was so bad.
Yeah, I mean, pro wrestling doesn't come off like a movie.
No.
You know, it doesn't, like.
Right.
But to me, when pro wrestling did replicate a movie, it was when, to me, it became the most interesting and fascinating thing I've ever found. which was in fact the advent of FMW, and that's where I really got drawn in and said that kind of thing as well, because like, how could wrestling get to this? And then when I found out later on what Onita was saying in his promos and this, that, and the other, but even for that, like the Japanese crowds are so quiet, you know, like,
yeah.
So I can relate to a lot of that, but the way that FMW always went was, like I said, all the top matches were like you were watching a movie. You know, it wasn't this athletic contest. It was, I got to do what I can to throw this guy into that pit to survive and win this match. So I mean, there was a whole lot of, well, you know, even they did the attempt with Tiger Jeet Singh to wrestle Onita in the jungle, which was like on this island in the pouring rain. Even that kind of stuff. I mean, it falls so flat when there's no fans there. It just feels so weird and eerie and bizarre. But and even that would come across, and it would just, you know, it was flat. It felt so flat.
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example, Tony, of one of the few things that have interested me the last couple of months. I've always liked the Revival, FTR, whatever they call themselves now, and they went to AEW, and I guess for years there's been kind of like talk among the wrestling fans over, you know, who's the better team, the Young Bucks or the Revival, FTW. If that's not FTW, I can't remember. It's F something, but the Revival, we'll say. And so they finally arrive in AEW.
I know this much. Weren't they? I guess they were the Revolt, or they were trying to go by the name the Revolt to get around.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
And
then they go with that.
But I'm sorry, I completely interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say. So, like, after all these years of the fans debating and the Young Bucks making comments about them on Twitter and stuff like that, they finally arrived in AEW last week, and you know they had that face-to-face confrontation with the Young Bucks, and there's nobody in the crowd, and there's just a couple of wrestlers saying this is, you know, chanting this is awesome or whatever, and they didn't attack the Bucks, but that's not really what I'm getting at. The whole point is if that was a live audience, that place would have erupted, and you just don't get that excitement.
Can you imagine when the lights turn back on and there they are?
Yeah,
that place
that's
would
what
have
I'm saying.
became unhinged.
You really miss that moment because they just can't do it right now.
Yeah, and I know this. Like I said, I don't have my finger on the pulse, but I do keep up with pro wrestling, and they're pretty much the Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson of this generation. Like, I know those guys. I mean, they started out with like a bunch of them, like 4 or 5 of them, but they narrowed it down to Dawson and what the other guy's name. That much I do know, and I know that it had been built up, and like fans online have just been talking about them and waiting and counting down the days to where they would just have enough and get the release. And I mean, if you're not doing it for the fans, what are you doing it for? You know, it's kind of like when you watch. Yeah, I would at a wrestling school, I would watch 2 guys that were really good, and I thought, man, this must really be something in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
But it falls so short when you yourself are just there watching it. It's like, wow, this is going to be awesome in front of a crowd. Meanwhile, you're watching the exact same match. You're watching the exact same match.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. We gotta wait and see. Hopefully, we do get, you know, wrestling fans back in the mix sooner than later. It all depends on, I guess, the numbers, and if these numbers keep going down or stay down more than likely, then that'll be the case. But I don't know. From the way they talk, though, I guess at least here in New York, I'll use that as an example. It sounds like even if the numbers stay down as far as deaths and cases and stuff like that, it's mostly deaths. I think cases are always going to be a little high. If you're testing people, you're going to find out that some of them have it asystematically, but even if those deaths stay down, I don't think they're in any rush to really, like I said before, fill those stadiums up with people, you know, shoulder to shoulder. They're afraid it's gonna erupt into, you know, what we're in March and April. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I remember going into the whole thing, everybody thought, man, well, the internet and the downloads and the YouTube hits and all that, like, they'll be much higher now because everybody's in quarantine, and so the internet's got to be lit up. And then like everybody was like shocked that like TV ratings weren't through the roof, and everything else, everyone like took a big step back, like, huh, it's kind of weird. You know, like me myself, I must have like 100 gigs worth of stuff that I want to just go back and watch. Like last night, I watched It Came from Hollywood. You know the with Dan Aykroyd and Cheech and Chong, and Gilda Radner, and all them back in the day. Like that, and I watch like old like Beavis and Butthead episodes, and I'm like, I'm one of the people that aren't contributing toward any ratings at all. Like, I never really watch like regular. The only regular TV I ever really watch is, I'll lock it in on like, the investigative. Now it's just the investigative channel. Like I'll keep it locked in on something like that if I go to watch TV, but. As far as being like the normal person, like I wasn't that guy like waiting for the Orange is New Black to come out and Netflix.
Me neither. I don't watch any of that stuff.
Like season 4 of F is for Family is coming. All right, and now there's talk about them doing yet another season of BoJack Horseman. It's it's stuff like that I'll look forward to, but as far as like regular like TV television, there's because I can always like tell a fan. I always tell somebody like, hey, I'll send this to you in a zip file if you'll send me the latest like Family Guy episodes starting from this one.
Right.
It's much easier for me to do it that way. So.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I don't watch a lot of that crap too. I mean, it's all these dancing shows and stuff. I don't really have any interest in any of that. I didn't have any interest in that stuff back in the 90s and stuff when it was, what were those MTV shows? That's really what started all of this. The Something Life or whatever. I don't remember, but I never watched any of that junk too when I was a lot younger. Yeah,
it's like I went on to a bunch of those. The Top Mojo list remind me of stuff that I've missed, or took for granted or didn't notice the first time around. But there's like a dark side to that too. I remember for a while there, I watched like the E. True Hollywood story on Three's Company, and it led to me like going back and watching from the very first episode, and I got into like halfway through the second season, and I couldn't sleep at night, and I was like, where's my life going? Like, I'm going to sit here and watch all of these, like, one by one and overanalyze these. And this is like night after night when I was in Japan, so it wasn't like wrestling, church, working out, gym, and, seeing, like, visiting friends and stuff like that. Like, late at night I was coming home and I was watching those things. I'm like, I felt like almost like this, like slow depression started to build. Like, what do you do? What are you watching all this for? Why this? It's like, this wasn't your favorite show growing up. Did you think you missed something and you have to go back and see it?
Right. Yeah, they brainwash you. They make you go back and look for things that you think you're gonna find, and most of the time you don't see it anyway. What they're talking about, which is like frustrating. You just wasted all that time going back and looking for it. But I definitely get you on that.
Yeah, and I mean, that was just like a random example, but there's other stuff. Like, I still want to go in there and watch, like, all those Beavis and Butthead episodes. I've been just, like, slowly pecking at each one. I'm like, my God, this really was a funny show. And, it's like the music videos and all that. Yeah, like somebody had sent me all 7 seasons, and it's with the music videos in it. It's not like the DVD release where they didn't have any of the rights to any of that stuff, so they couldn't put up like the actual footage of them riffing on all the videos and all that stuff too. So this was like the full episodes, the way that they aired and all that stuff. That, and for some reason, I don't know, I watched like the first episode. I watched the first season of Big Mouth, and I was like, oh, I'm not that impressed. And then I went back and watched the last 2 seasons, and I'm like, I really like that show. What the hell?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, am I thinking it's better now, or did it get better? I don't know.
It got better.
And I'm not for last week it was you remember the Sleepaway Camp movies? Those.
Oh yeah.
And I watched them all, and I was just like,
God, this is so campy and horrible. This is like bad, but it's like fascinating that it could be this bad. And what were they thinking? And what was the budget on this? And, you know, you really get to thinking about and analyzing things. And that kind of stuff always keeps me interested. You know, that kind of, it seems like there's a never-ending, like the Saw movies too.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, like what would make you go back and watch those? But it's just it's fascinating in a bizarre way of how many things that if you look close they botched on.
Yeah.
But it's like you overlook that and go, dude, it's just a movie anyway. Who cares?
Right.
Oh yeah, tonight. Yeah, like later on tonight, I'll fall asleep, wake up first thing in the morning, and go right back to work. But before I do that, I'll go to sleep watching It Chapter 2 and. Apparently, the Beyonce movie "Obsessed" was great. I watched that.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah.
Because apparently it's like, it's like a New Day. It's kind of like a New Day Fatal Attraction. Which, if you've seen the movie Thin Line Between Love and Hate with Martin Lawrence, that was like an updated rip-off version of that, and I found that interesting.
All right.
And just because.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always some good stuff on. I was watching, I think it was the first It remake a couple of days ago, actually, it was on. I'll just watch it in pieces, though. I don't watch every minute of it because I've seen it a time or two. So, but yeah, sometimes you get drawn in by those movies. All right, Tony, I want to thank you for coming on. This is always a pleasure. And you're going to be here for a while, right? You're not going back to Japan till later in the year, so we'll do this again next month.
Yeah, I don't leave until probably late September, early October. But in the meantime, there's going to be plenty of H2O getting back on their feet and doing their thing. Same thing with Pro Wrestling 01 Northeast and Atomic Championship Wrestling. There's also a couple other things that, independents. I've talked openly with the guys about coming in and doing and that kind of thing. Before I leave, go back out to WW, and it's amazing too. Outside of Tremont's H2O, there's 2 people that have expressed like open interest in when wrestling returns, having Onita come back in here and do his thing. So it's always fascinating. It's always interesting to me. Everything will get back onto its feet. And, man, with all the WWE releases, that alone is going to be interesting enough, right?
Oh yeah.
To see where all these square pegs and what kind of round holes they're going to try to get into.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I know they might hire a few of them back, like Drake Maverick. I think already went back to the WWE. They kept him, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where a lot of those other guys and gals wind up. AEW
and aren't they making? Yeah, they're making like another bid for like Drew Gulak, I guess, and that kind of thing.
I think Gulak too. I heard. I know that Deonna Purrazzo went to Impact because she's talking about it like every day on Twitter. And the others, I don't know. I haven't really seen, as far as the others. Those were the big names. Obviously, the Revival went to. They weren't released. They asked for their release, so they were begging for their release actually for like a year or so. And they're in AEW. So I think the big ones are already. I guess the only other one I can think of is Rusev. We got to see where Rusev goes because I still think he's a big name, that could really make an impact wherever he goes. But other than that, I think they've all landed already.
Yeah, for the most part, it's going to be interesting to tell. In the months coming up, I mean, there's more interest now than ever when wrestling gets back to, being, running like regularly and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll see where it takes everything.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting.
A lot of fans that, even though it's been on with these empty arena shows, it's just mainly been TV. And a lot of fans are going to be starved to go back to watching some live wrestling on the indies at WWE, AEW. Just gotta see when they let them in. I guess that's the whole thing. Yeah,
with the whole quarantine thing, it's kind of like and then with it being extended, it's kind of like how it's bad if you leave your phone plugged in and it's charging up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all these people are like super charged up, but it's bad for it if your phone's overcharging and it's nice. it's nice. It's nice to rest, and everybody out there has definitely has had their fill and share of eating and overeating and that kind of thing. So, seeing coming out of it, I just got to see what happens. It's all up in the air. All what we make of it.
Yeah, we just got to see. Day by day right now.
Yeah, I know you're winding down. The thing that just kind of blows my mind, just looking at one observation, one thing that I did notice throughout all this stuff: looting, riots, deadly viruses, suicide, this, that, and the other. I happened to notice something.
What's that?
The world didn't end. The world didn't end.
That's true. Well, I mean, they were when this coronavirus thing first started coming out. Everybody, they were talking about millions upon millions of people dying, and not to say a lot of people didn't die. A lot of people did die, but wasn't the millions they were talking about. And then you hear stories about them being classified where it's like the hospitals and stuff get more money if they classify it as a COVID death, and if they put someone on a ventilator, they get 6-7 times more than if they just send them home to recover that way. I don't know. You don't know what to believe. You kind of understand, because we all know that insurance fraud happens everywhere. So why wouldn't that be happening? What's happening. So, but we got to see. We got to see what happens now going forward.
Yeah, and because I got insurance fraud, because I did reference the Saw movies earlier, on top of a million other things.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah. You had to remember the whole scare, AIDS, late 80s, and how deadly crack was.
Yeah.
And
well, that was another thing. That if you think back to that, kids wouldn't go near kids. Remember, parents were keeping their kids home. Same thing if you think about it. And that was
same type of thing.
Because people didn't know. They didn't have the whole story, which is kind of like what this is. They're starting to get.
Yeah. Then there was There was so much of people saying, "Oh, it's a myth. I don't even know anybody with AIDS. I've never known no one to have AIDS."
Yeah.
Slowly, it would creep away into
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing that annoys me too, though. It's like you do hear people saying that coronavirus is fake, and it's not fake. It's just we just don't know how lethal it is. We know it's lethal to certain people who have underlying conditions and are older. It is lethal to them, whether people want to like it or not. It's lethal, but as far as the numbers go, that's up in the air. We just gotta wait and see. Hopefully, they just come up with some kind of either a vaccine or at least some kind of therapeutic, thing that we can take where at least if you get it, you're not dying or getting hooked to a ventilator. That's the main thing.
Something along those lines, and I didn't get a chance. You've been the one asking questions. I never got to ask you how you are feeling.
On what?
As far as, I know that you were congested and that kind of thing. I didn't even have a chance to ask you initially how you were doing and how things have been for you. We went right into we went right into all the problems and all the other stuff that's going on in the world. I didn't even I kind of glazed over it. To find out how you're doing.
Really I always have a cough because I have asthma a little bit. So, as I talk, I get a little cough here and there, and I always drink water as I do these interviews and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm basically like you. I worked throughout the whole thing. I wasn't home at all, which I'm happy for. I don't know how I could have survived sitting home, like you said, looking at four walls for 3 or 4 months, but. Yeah, life goes on. Just being careful, just wearing the mask. Like I said before, using the hand sanitizer, definitely washing my hands and everything as soon as you come home. That's what I've been doing. But I always did that stuff. That's the other thing. It's like, you hear people talking about like these big changes. It's like, weren't you clean to begin with? It's like, how dirty are some of these people? They act like it's like a big life change to wash their hands. That's what baffles me.
Yeah, I'm going through everyday life, but with what precautions they want taken, I'm following procedure. I got to. It's not because I'm a mindless sheep or anything. It's some real stuff is going on out there.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You can't just deny everything and revolt against everything. It's a virus that's out there, so you got to at least be smart about it.
and there is no quarantine. As far as what's done is done. There is no undoing it. What's happened has happened. It's affected the entire world.
Right.
It's not just us. It's not just in New York. It's not just in Jersey. I mean, there's people out in the Midwest. There's people everywhere hurting, and it put one hell of a dent in America and the economy and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All you can do is push on and hope for the best.
Like I said, one day at a time, and then hopefully we'll all be all right though. But all right, so this has been another great interview, Tony. And like I said, we'll talk next month, and like some of the shows that you were talking about a couple of minutes ago. Hopefully they're going on and really got some good wrestling news to talk about next month.
Yeah, when I think about it and stuff coming up and watching things kind of slowly but surely, get back on his feet and that kind of, it's just motivation for me. Eating like a giant salad instead of like eggplant, like fried eggplant instead of fried eggplant and lasagna, it's like, let me just eat this big bowl of salad.
Yeah, we'll all get back.
And even that has to be done in moderation.
Yeah, true. All right, Tony, it was a pleasure having you on, and we will talk next month. Thank you.
Always an honor and always a privilege. I do appreciate you. Thank you so much. I truly do appreciate you, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Tony. Bye.
You take good care. I'll talk to you again soon.
You've been listening to Team Left Jab Uncensored. Don't forget to check out all the great shows on the Team Left Jab United Radio Network. All ways to listen and links to the site are at linktr.ee/Team Left Jab. Thanks for tuning in and supporting Team Left Jab.